All right, welcome everybody to the 2024 Western North Carolina Water Quality Conference. This is actually our, so we've been doing it since 2013. So I guess this is our 11th conference or 12th. And previous to that, we did a air quality conference that we started in 2006. So this kind of bred out of that. We originally started the conference with Lenore University as a co-host. We would have it at their facilities. They would provide lunch. Unfortunately, this year they're going through a transition with their executive director. They don't currently have one, so they won't be joining us this year, but we do plan to continue our relationship with them in the future. So today, just going through the agenda, I'll give this short introduction, and in a minute I'm gonna let Haley and Carolina Conway introduce themselves. But at 9:15, we have reduced runoff project with Renee Fortner from the Watershed Resources Manager, or she is the Watershed Resources Manager at Riverlink. At 10:15, we have using Survey 123 and BMP for maintaining a stormwater program. The speaker is Marissa Houston. She's a stormwater program manager with the city of Mooresville. At 11:15, we have the Catawba River Keepers Initiative around stormwater restoration and water quality. The speaker there is Grant Buckner. He's the Northern Basin Director with the Catawba River Keepers. At 12:15, or maybe a little sooner if we in that session a little quicker, we'll have a lunch break, which will last till 1:30. And then we'll have our lake programs and data management with Annie Marie Taylor. She's the executive director of EQI. And then from 2:30 to 3:15, we have probabilistic stream bank erosion curves for advancing assessment and prediction in the context of climate change. The speaker there is Dr. Castro Bolanaga, associate professor with NC State University. And I hope I pronounced that right. We'll get clarification on that later. So again, welcome everybody. The Catawba, let's see, the Western Piedmont Council of Governments has a water quality program. That includes a number of things. We do water quality planning and grants. We've done, currently we're working on the Hunting Creek watershed plan, which is taking place in the city of Morganton. In the past, we've done the Lake Roadhis watershed plan for the entire region. We've done the McGaggart Creek watershed plan, which is in Valdez, as well as a Lower Creek water resource protection plan. We also have a water resources committee that is attended by many of our local governments as well as interested citizens. We try to meet quarterly and have speakers at those. So if any of you would like to join us for any of those, if you see interesting speakers along the way, please join us. We've also got a stormwater management program, which includes compliance and outreach and involvement. So right now I'm going to let Haley, if you want to introduce yourself. She's our compliance person with stormwater.
Hi, I'm Haley Hopkins. I run the stormwater program on the compliance side of things for the Western Piedmont Council of Governments.
And Carolina Conway.
Hi, yes, I'm Carolina. I'm the Environmental Education and Outreach Coordinator for the COG.
Right. And I'm Johnny Ware. I'm Assistant Planning Director here at the COG over long-range planning and environmental planning projects. So the plan here today is to go through the conference, and we will plan on having AICP credits ready after the conference once we've written our summaries for those. So I will send a follow-up email out with a survey. If you guys wouldn't mind filling that out, it helps us to improve the conference, or maybe you can suggest future topics. And it is required for our AICP compliance if you'd like to continue to receive those credits. Let's see. Now I'm going to turn it over to Haley to introduce our first speaker, Renee Fortner. While we are in each session, if you wouldn't mind putting any questions that you have in the chat function, and then we'll facilitate those questions at the end of the presentation, and we'll have a little time for questions there. So, Haley?
Renee Fortner, she is the Watershed Resource Manager at Riverlink. Renee Fortner is the Watershed Resources Manager at Asheville-based environmental nonprofit Riverlink. As a river paddler and gardener, Renee is continually reminded how the environment around us and our daily lives are affected by access to clean, abundant water. Through her work, she built a collaborative partnerships to address water-related issues such as stormwater runoff through a community-centered approach.
Thank you for the introduction and thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm excited to share some things that we've been working on at Riverlink for the past few months. I'm going to share my screen. And all right, how does that look?
Looks great.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to be talking about an initiative called Reduce Rain Runoff. And it's a campaign that we have been working on for the last year. And the focus is to raise awareness and inspire action. But first, a little bit about Riverlink and who we are. We were founded in the mid-1980s, and our mission is to promote both the environmental and the economic vitality of the French Broad River watershed. And so we work throughout the 8-county region in Western North Carolina that makes up the French Broad River watershed. We have 3 core programs. We have an environmental education. So we offer free environmental ed lessons to students from K through 12 throughout our region. We're also a land trust. So we can place conservation easements on properties that are important to protecting water quality. So we focus on floodplain and streamside areas, steep slope properties. We also have a rich history of purchasing properties along the river in Asheville, old dilapidated properties, former industrial properties, and then converting those into public green space. Parks and greenways, also a big focus of our land conservation program. And then our watershed health, which I oversee, is focused on protecting and improving water quality and addressing issues like flooding. And a big focus of ours is stormwater runoff because it contributes greatly to flooding and water quality issues in the French Broad River. And this is our office. We are located down in the River Arts District of Asheville. And this was our office on September 27th, post Tropical Storm Helene. We experienced historic flooding. I'm sure if you're not from the Asheville area, I know you are aware of the impacts of Helene to our watershed. And yeah, this building was constructed in, I think, 1910. And so this building has endured both the 1916 flood, which up until Helene was historically the largest flood ever recorded in Asheville. And now it has also endured Helene. And I've been working at Riverlink for almost 8 years now, and almost on a daily basis, a trolley, open air trolley full of tourists drives by our office, and they slow down, and the tour guide points out the high water mark, which is painted white on the side of our building. And it's the high water mark of the 1916 flood. And you can hear people gasp at how high the river got on our building, because on a normal day, we're pretty far away from the river right there. But this flood was actually 2 feet higher than the 1916 flood on our building. So we're going to have to add a new high water mark. But anyway, we're all working remotely at the moment and hoping to be back into our space early next year. But while this flooding, this historic flooding is at the forefront of everybody's minds, understandably so, most of the flooding that we experience is more localized nuisance flooding from unnamed storms. And this is an article from the Asheville Citizen-Times this past July, so just a couple months before Hurricane Helene came through. A brewery down in the River Arts District that is well away from the river, but it lies beside a small stream called Bacote Branch. This is the Rad Brewery, experienced flooding in the lower level of the brewery, and their customers had to be evacuated. And this article describes the event as a brief but torrential summer storm. And it lasted for about 30 minutes, and it was very intense and very concentrated right here in this part of downtown Asheville. And we're seeing, more and more extreme rain events like this throughout the world, really. And so this is primarily when we focus on flooding and we talk about flooding, Riverlink, we're talking about these type of events that can be quite devastating to a local business like this one, but they're not the historic flooding events that get most of the attention, like something like Hurricane Helene. But what is causing these small, intense storms? You all are probably aware of this, working in this field, but with climate change and the increasing temperature of our planet, the atmosphere can hold more moisture, and this is fueling wetter storms. And you couple that with increased development, which we're experiencing rapid development in our watershed. And with that development brings an increase in hard impervious surfaces, more rooftops, more driveways, parking lots, and those impervious surfaces prevent that rain from being able to soak into the ground naturally. And it has, basically has nowhere to go. And so that's what causes this localized flooding in our urban areas. And so this is what compelled us to embark on a public service awareness campaign that we call Reduce Rain Runoff. And this campaign, the goal was to raise awareness about the impacts of stormwater runoff and these hard surfaces that cause stormwater runoff. And we talk about flooding, but also the impacts that stormwater runoff has on our water quality. There's 19 miles of the French Broad River now that's on the 303D list. It's listed as impaired for fecal coliform bacteria. We have multiple small tributary streams in Asheville that are also listed as impaired for benthic macroinvertebrates and fecal coliform. And stormwater runoff is contributing to those impairments. And this campaign set out to offer just simple solutions that community members can implement at their home, at their business, and help be a part of the solution to our water quality and flooding issues. And we were fortunate to get funding for this campaign through the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina, the Duke Energy Foundation, and a local private foundation called the McClure Fund. And so with this grant funding, we were able to hire a Darby Communications. So they're a firm here in Asheville, and they helped us with 12 months of both earned and paid media coverage. So we were able to get free media coverage, and we also paid for it. And we were covered in newspaper articles, Asheville Citizen-Times, Hendersonville, Town of Black Mountain newspapers. We paid for radio ads on Blue Ridge Public Radio. We've been featured in the Laurel magazine. I was interviewed for a regional podcast, all on this topic of how we can reduce runoff. We also wrote monthly blog posts on different topics related to stormwater runoff, and we sent those blogs monthly to our regular newsletter subscribers. We put out weekly social media posts that were led by our AmeriCorps members. And then we created a dedicated web page that served as an information hub that all of the earned paid media, blog posts, social media would all direct people that wanted to learn more about things that they could do at home. They would be directed to this information hub. This is one of our paid ads that was featured in the Mountain Express. It's a free weekly publication here in Asheville, focused on, all of the regional happenings. And this was a back page ad. And with Darby Communications' help, we created these really simple, eye-catching ads that highlighted stormwater runoff. This one makes the case that it's the #1 threat to the French Broad River. And then we have this really eye-catching photo of sediment. This was a rain event near our office in the River Arts District. I took this photo. This sediment was coming off a construction site, but it was stormwater related, and it just really hammers home that, runoff is getting into the river. Sediment is part of that problem. And then, we created a logo for reduce rain runoff, and then learn how you can reduce your impact. And that's going to direct readers to that information hub that I just mentioned. But also just trying to keep the language really accessible to a wide audience, not provide a lot of information. I mean, you can't provide a lot of information in an ad, but the goal was to just catch people's eyes, make a kind of provocative statement that is true, and then encourage people to learn more by visiting the information hub. Oops. This was another ad making the case, in our urban areas, we have hard surfaces. Half of the rain that falls in these urban areas becomes runoff. But on the other hand, in a more naturalized setting, 90% of the runoff is going to soak into the ground. Again, we have a reduced rain runoff logo. We have a QR code if people want to scan it. This was also in the Mountain Express, and they can also visit the website via the link. So providing multiple options for people to be able to access the information hub. Here's another ad. Here we introduce the idea of green infrastructure as a nature-based solution for treating runoff, and then encouraging people to be a part of the solution. And then we have this lovely image of a rain garden. This is the campaign landing page, or the information hub. And we have, multiple avenues that people can explore. The basics is just really the basics of stormwater runoff. Within this portal, it takes you to a page with just the basic, what is stormwater runoff? What are the pollutants in stormwater runoff? What are the issues that it contributes to? Then we have what we call the stormwater diaries. We wanted to provide just inspirational stories and real life examples of people's neighbors and local businesses that have already done or taken action to reduce the amount of runoff that's leaving their properties. We have a take action button. This is going to take people to Riverlink's Water Rich Guide, which is a free resource that was developed by a landscape architect, but it walks people through the step-by-step process on how to implement things like rain gardens, how to build your own rain barrel, and then spread the word. Provided content that people who have social media accounts for them to share the message. And we were able to get businesses like New Belgium Brewery, Sunny Point Cafe in West Asheville, who have a lot of followers on their social media account. We were able to provide them with content that they could also help us, spread the word to their followers as well. And then our AmeriCorps members used Canva. They had a lot of fun with this to create our own infographics that we shared to our social media. And, the EPA has a lot of good content, a lot of good infographics on around stormwater runoff and water quality, but we wanted to create our own branded content. And so here we're introducing the idea of how our landscapes can act as a green filter, allowing rainwater to soak into the ground and be filtered naturally, or it can be a gray funnel. And the hard surfaces can funnel large quantities of fast-moving, untreated stormwater and all the pollutants that come along with that directly into our waterways. There's a lot of people that don't realize that storm drains empty directly into local streams. Here's another infographic that we created to just to visualize the difference between gray infrastructure and what it could look like if that same neighborhood implemented some green infrastructure. So here we have some street side or rain gardens in the public right of way. And then this is a more detailed infographic that we created with a lot of shocking numbers. And we highlight, in Buncombe County, which is where Riverlink is located, we kind of honed in on Buncombe County. We used GIS parcel data to calculate the number of rooftops in Buncombe County and the roof area that represents, and rainwater's running off of these roofs. And then we do a calculation in a 1-inch rainstorm. Those rooftops are generating 183 million gallons of runoff. Bump it up to a 4-inch rain, more runoff. And then we did the calculations based on our average annual rainfall of 45 inches a year. The rooftops in Buncombe County alone are generating 8.6 billion gallons of runoff. And that's not to say that every rooftop is connected to a stream or is running off into a storm drain, but just to hit home this message that people might not be thinking about where the water on the rooftop is being directed. And in a lot of cases, people's downspouts are being directed to a storm drain on the street or directly into their backyard stream. And then this is the stormwater diaries that I mentioned. So these are locals who are making a difference. So we put the word out that we were looking for people who had implemented rain barrels and rain gardens and other runoff preventing projects on their properties. And we had a really great response from people who were excited to share their story of how, they were having runoff issues in their yard and they installed rain barrels and swales. That's Weston from Black Mountain. That's what he did in his yard. And then we have Miss Glenda in Asheville who turned her lawn into a thriving oasis by installing rain gardens. So inspiring stories, people in the community that are taking action. This is what the Take Action landing page looks like. So as a resident or a business owner in Western North Carolina, you can be a part of the solution. And we offered 4 ways that people can take action to reduce runoff on their properties. Just basically disconnecting your downspout from the storm sewer system and rerouting your downspout onto your lawn or into a garden bed. You can install a rain barrel to intercept your roof runoff. You can build a rain garden. And then we have some other examples within our water-rich guide of things like how to build a swale, how to create a French drain. And then we have downloadable guides that provide, step-by-step instructions on how to design and install your own rain garden. And then we were fortunate about, I guess halfway through the campaign, we received funding from Buncombe County's new Clean Water Fund to help people reduce runoff on their property by providing free rain barrels and rain gardens. This program, Buncombe County wanted to focus on sub-watersheds within the county that had impaired waterways with approved watershed action plans. So the requirements of the grant meant that we had to kind of zero in on a very specific and limited geography within Buncombe County. So within Buncombe County, we have Smith Mill Creek in West Asheville. We have a couple streams in the downtown Asheville area. And then the Swananoa River and Black Mountain are all listed as impaired. Stormwater runoff is a contributing factor of their impairment, and all three have approved watershed action plans. So we focused on those areas. This image is a postcard that we sent to residents that lived within those watersheds, and it's offering free rain barrels. Part of the program, we wanted to extend our grant dollars as far as we could, so we decided to offer a cost share rain barrel to residents who had the ability to pay, 50% of the cost of the rain barrel. But then we also wanted to offer free rain barrels for low-income residents. And so the postcard would take people to the landing page for this particular program, which we decided to call Reduce Roof Runoff. And through the program, well, I guess I'll just briefly describe how we determined income eligibility. We used Buncombe County's Community Index, and this is an interactive map, and they used census data to highlight areas where there's a high concentration of community members who might not be able to access essential resources. And so we zoned in or honed in on these particular areas. And when people would go to the Reduce Roof Runoff page, they would fill out a Google form saying if they were interested in a rain barrel or a rain garden or both. They would include their address, and we would look up that address and cross-reference to this community index map to see if they were eligible for the free rain barrel or the 50% cost share rain barrel. And we worked with this wonderful business based in North Carolina, Rainwater Solutions, and they manufacture what they call, this is the IV rain barrel. It's a 50-gallon barrel made from recycled plastic. And they also happen to be a family-owned B Corporation business. And so they created an online e-commerce site for us to direct people towards, and if they were income eligible, they didn't have to purchase the rain barrel, but if they qualified for the cost share, they would go to the e-commerce site where they would pay $35 for a really nice 50-gallon rain barrel. And for people who are income eligible or unable to install the rain barrel themselves, we also offered installation. This photo is two of our AmeriCorps members installing a rain barrel for a woman, a resident of the town of Black Mountain. And so we are nearing the end of our public service campaign. We're about halfway through our rain barrel giveaway cost share program. And so to date, we were able to earn 53 pieces of media. So this program was highlighted in 53 different publications. And Darby Communications was able to run some analytics on the media, and they determined that across all of the media, we received 61 million views. And Yahoo News picked up a news article from, I believe, from Hendersonville. And so that contributed to a lot of the millions of views that we received during the campaign. And to date, we have distributed a little over 70 rain barrels. We're taking a pause during the winter months because rain barrels aren't really at the top of people's minds right now. And then we're going to pick up again in the spring. So I imagine that we'll easily be able to double that number of rain barrels being distributed out into the community. And right after Hurricane Helene, as you all have probably heard of, or aware of if you don't live here, but Buncombe County was without drinking water. We were without any water for 2 weeks, and then have been without drinking water for longer than that. But this was I walked past this home in my neighborhood, and this was before we had gotten any water back in our taps, and people were using their rain barrels that were filled with water to flush their toilets with. And kind neighbors were dragging their full rain barrels out to the street and making that water available for their neighbors to use to flush their toilets. And so we saw a huge interest in our rain barrel program during this time. A lot of people reaching out wanting rain barrels. So now we know that rainwater can be used not only for watering your garden, but also for flushing your toilet in the absence of water. And so with that, yeah, thank you for your time. And I believe if we have time for questions, we can take questions now. Is that correct, Haley?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, please use the chat function. In the meantime, I have a quick question. How closely do you work with your local governments with regard to this project?
We work very closely with local governments. We have partnered with the city of Asheville on an Adopt a Storm Drain program. We partner regularly with the town of Woodfin and town of Black Mountain. They both helped promote the program via their newsletters and social media. So they help drive people to the program. We partnered with Land of Sky Regional Council to use their building as a place to store the rain barrels, as well as use it as a location for people to come and pick up their rain barrels. So yeah, we partner very closely with our local governments.
As far as your funding, where does a lot of your funding come from?
For this project in particular, or just in general?
Just this project.
This project, well, we were fortunate to get the most of the funding came from the Community Foundation of Western North Carolina, and they have a specific grant fund they call Natural and Cultural Resources. And so we were able to get funding from them. And then we matched that with some funding from the Duke Energy Foundation and the McClure Fund, which is a private foundation based here in Asheville.
And it looks like we have a question from the chat. Renee, is there any interest in going with larger cistern systems bigger than rain barrels?
There is an interest. I would say that's most of our limitation there is funding because those larger cisterns cost more money. We did have quite a few people purchase more than one of these 50-gallon rain barrels because they can be linked together to increase the capacity. But yeah, 50-gallon rain barrels fill up very quickly during a rain event. So we would love to get more large cisterns out in the community. So in addition to rain barrels, we've seen a big influx of those, I believe they're 300-gallon totes, those cube-shaped totes that are used a lot in agriculture. So those started popping up all over Asheville. People were filling them with both non-potable and potable water and making that water available to community members while the city of Asheville was working to get their water system back up and running. And so I'm curious what's going to happen to all of those totes now that water has returned. And I would love to help facilitate reallocating those totes to, schools with community gardens, businesses, because they are much more, obviously they have a better ability to capture more runoff. So great question.
I have one other question. what other, you'd mentioned, your views and how many people had seen certain things. What other metrics do you use to measure your success with outreach?
I wish we had a way to measure how many people took action, right? We know how many people purchased and have received our free rain barrels, but we don't know how many people read the article, went to the website, and was like, wow, I can dig a rain garden in my backyard. I'm going to do that. I wish we had a better way to track how many people have taken action. So we're kind of limited to tracking, how many people view our social media posts, how many people read our newsletter, and then how many people read the articles that were online. I mean, I suppose I could, yeah, I can say I've gotten a lot of phone calls and emails from people since we've been doing this campaign that need assistance with stormwater runoff on their property, coming from someone else's property and negatively impacting their property. I do get a lot of phone calls, and it was coming from people who are seeing our ads about runoff.
And it looks like we have a couple other questions in the chat. This one comes from Grady McCauley. He said, I appreciate your point that the private solutions help with smaller events, not hurricanes, but in context of Helene recovery, which I assume damaged a lot of the existing stormwater control measures. Do the private solutions have a role in recovery? Grateful for what you're doing.
Yeah, I was speaking with stormwater staff from the city of Asheville this past week, and I was asking about their green stormwater infrastructure practices, which we have helped them with maintenance over time. And they were saying that they've lost 50% of their green stormwater infrastructure because of flooding, because a lot of it was along the French Broad River and the Swannanoa. But they're hoping to be able to use public assistance funding from the EPA to repair that infrastructure. So the question is kind of what role do the smaller private landowners have to play in recovery? Is that, I don't understand the question.
Yeah, that seems like that's what he's asking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, there's certainly, the flooding heavily damaged the riparian buffers along, our streams and rivers. So they're even more vulnerable than ever to erosion, ongoing erosion. So I'd say anything that private landowners, business owners can do to help lessen the pressure on those waterways, and, stormwater runoff is part of that pressure, the large volume of water that's entering our streams all at once from our storm drains and downspouts. Anything we can do to lessen the pressure on our waterways until we can, help repair and reestablish a lot of those riparian buffers will certainly help be part of the recovery efforts.
Okay. How did the steep slope practices hold up with Tim Ormond?
Yeah, I believe I spoke to that project a couple of years ago as part of this conference. And Tim Orman from Blue Earth Engineering was with me that day, and Keith McDade from Lenore Ryan. Yeah, that was a research project. It was a 3-year project where we partnered with Blue Earth Engineering and created some pretty novel designs for stormwater features that would function on steep slopes. And we recruited private property owners in downtown Asheville that they allowed us to build these practices on their steep slopes. So these were things like swales and rain gardens that had some design tweaks that made them, work well on a steeper slope. And so we constructed those in year 1 of the project, and then we tracked them over the course of 2 years, looking at how effective they were at capturing and infiltrating the roof runoff of these homes, and also how well they held up. And I can say that they've all done really well. I continue to stop by and check on them periodically, and none of them have experienced erosion or failure. And they all held up really well with the heavy rains that we got from Helene. So yeah, say they have done really well.
Okay, I think that concludes any questions in the chat box. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Renee. Really appreciate it. So we are at 9:40. Our next presentation will be at 10:15. Before we go into a break, though, I want to mention our sponsors. So our sponsors for the conference, they include the Water Resources Committee, which is made up of our 28 local governments. That's our 4 counties and our 24 municipalities within. We also have sponsors with our stormwater partnership. That is the partnership where we manage their stormwater permit. We also do outreach. These include the town of Granite Falls, town of Hudson, town of Sawmills, city of Lenore, city of Conover, town of Maiden, Newton, Cages Mountain, Gamewell, Hickory, Morganton, and Valdez. So those are our sponsors for the conference. And another thing I'd like to mention is our Foothills experience. So if you're interested, please go to our North Carolina Foothills Experience regional tool. It's there to provide users with information about all the amazing things our area has to offer in our 4-county region of Alexander, Burke, Caldwell, and Catawba. So please visit that. All right, so we will meet back here at 10:15, and we will begin our next speaker.